Here are the instructions for your final assignment. You'll be provided with two files, one with the boot in it and one with a picture of the sky that you can see here on another layer. The way you should start is just open up the boot file and immediately save it as your last name underscore final.psd. It is sized appropriately, so just start with the boot file and immediately save that as your file. All right. After that, do the following that I'm about to explain here. I've got a finished example here on screen, and I also have the list criteria that you can work by that is also on my webpage, but I also have it here on the video. Right here is what you'll be creating. It's basically like a magazine cover, if you will, and I would like you to stick to the layer structure that you see here over on the right. You will be provided with the images for this, namely an image with the boot, and you'll get a second image that will have this blue sky that you see down here in a layer. All right, so let me quickly explain how you will build this. I'm going to go over to my paths palette, and I have a finished path here called boot. And if I go over there and select it, I'll just show you here that it's a series of anchor points and handles, of course, that you should create in your path palette using the pen tool. Remember, when you create a path, always start by creating new path, then go to your pen tool, then start to draw. All right, so you will do a very close path, isolating that cowboy boot. Once you're done that, I'd like you to convert that to a selection. I can show you here, it's this button here as the shortcut, and it creates a selection as you see there. Let me turn off all these other layers for now and just show you sort of the boot, if you will. Okay, so I'll even turn off the mask layer. This is what you start with. When you create that path, you will convert it to a selection, and with that selection, you'll create a layer mask. Okay, I'm going to turn that mask back on. I'm shift clicking here to hide it and show it. And once you create that layer mask, you will be hiding the background. All right, I'm just going to deselect that as well. And that takes care of the boot layer that you see right here. Okay, now you're supposed to duplicate that layer, or you should duplicate that layer, and I'll show you the second layer down here of the duplicate. And this one is intended to capture the shadows on the tabletop, but to give them a different color. The method I'm asking you to do for that one is to use a blend mode of multiply on the boot layer, and it will push down through to a layer below that you'll have to create and just fill that with a color right there. You'll also have to take that mask and invert it in order to capture everything but the boot. I've just hidden the boot layer there. So that's what this second layer down here, which is virtually at the bottom, will do. This one's really for the table to capture those true shadows and project them down onto a colored surface below. And of course, the way that works is your blend mode, in this case, would be set to multiply. Okay, I'm going to turn the boot back on, work my way up. So the boot's done, the table's done in this case. Probably the next step is you should add the image of the sky. So I'm just going to hide that for a second. You will have to take that second file, select the whole sky, copy it, then come back to this boot file and paste it. Okay? Once you paste it, it'll be in a layer. You may have to go to your move tool to move it to the top of the screen as you see here. If I hide this mask for a minute, you see it's just a sharp square image, and I'd like you to actually add a layer mask that will soften the bottom. So a little gradient in the layer mask to soften the bottom so that it blends with this colored background. Okay. Then with that, I'd like you to add a adjustment layer using hue and saturation. If I double click this, actually if I double click this here, I can show the properties. Hue saturation, use your colorize button and make it some sort of a green. Okay. And as you see there, I also want you to connect that adjustment layer to the sky so that it doesn't affect the other layers below. The way you do that is, if I right click, I can show you here. You just create a clipping path, and it might be missing here because of my capture software. The other way to do it though is Option on the Mac or Alt on the PC and go between the layers and just click. I've just turned it off there. I'm turning it back on there. Okay, and that is affecting the sky layer. Then you should take a photo of yourself, and if you're not comfortable with that, a photo of somebody, a person, or perhaps your pet, and place it between the boot layer and the sky layer. And I'm going to turn mine on now. This is an old photo of mine. And I'd like you to create a smart object out of it. All right, so convert it to a smart object. Then you'll probably have to reduce it, but make it roughly this size. And then add a layer mask to the smart object and isolate the subject. You could probably do that fairly quickly with the object selection tool, but if not, you may have to go around either using your brush or potentially the pen tool and make a selection out of it. All right, but I want you to do a close cut around the subject like that, and also just add a little drop shadow on it with your effects. All right, now for the boot, I'm going to turn this back on here. I want you to colorize the boot using the same method you did down here. Create an adjustment layer directly above the boot and connect it to the boot by creating a clipping mask. This one was colorized as well using the colorize button, and make it a similar color as you see here. Okay. The rest is basically the text, and I'm going to have you create a layer group and keep all your text in a layer group as you see here. I'm going to turn the visibility back on for my 4 text items. Starting at the top, put your first name in large letters to occupy a similar amount of space, roughly 90%, and then leveraging the path that you created, you can again create a layer mask for that to make it look like it's going behind the boot. You probably will have to invert that to get that effect. Then directly below that, oh yes, on this as well, add a drop shadow. I can show you here. Then put your last name down here in much smaller letters, make it fit in this same area. Use a similar color as you see here, and also add a drop shadow. And finally, down here, I'd like you to add these same words, first year animation student. Choose a similar color, and again, using effects, add a stroke around that one. And then finally, at the bottom, use your pen tool to create a squiggly line under the boot. If you can imitate the shape of the boot, that would be great. And just add the line using your text on a line feature, using the text tool, of course. Click on the line that you create with the pen tool and add digital images and whatever your group is. If you're group A, put A. If you're group B, put B. All right. And then finally, at the top, a little decorative element. I'll turn that layer on. And it's just these little spheres. You can create one and then copy it to the next corner and then copy that set to the bottom. And use the gradient tool to create a radial gradient like that. You can choose a different color if you like, and also add an outer glow to that. Okay, and that can go on one layer. You could put it on 4 layers, but it's probably easier to create it on a single layer. All right, and it should look very much something like this graphic. And that will be your final assignment for digital imagery. It will be due on the last day of class for this semester. And I will be in class to help for the remainder of the semester. And that's your assignment.